Your book, The Professor and the Madman, was a surprise success. What inspired you to write it, and how do you account for why it was so successful?
That's very interesting. What had happened was I was writing a book about the shipping industry. I wanted to buy a little cargo steamer, about 100 feet long, 800 tons, equip it with a crew of friends of mine, and we'd sail around the world picking up. It sounds a ridiculous idea, but it was actually, I maybe trivialized it. It was actually a rather good idea, but quite expensive to do. But my publisher agreed to pay, and so issued me a chunk of money, and I began the proceedings to buy this ship, which was in the Baltic. And I then went to have lunch with her in New York one day to give her a progress report. And after what normally happens, or used to happen pre-COVID, you would go and have lunch with your publisher, and then he or she would take you back to the office and show you the books on her shelf, which she's publishing that year. And one of them, she said, take any one of them. These are what I'm publishing. So I got out a book by a man called Jonathan Green called Chasing the Sun, Dictionaries and the Men Who Made Them, because I liked dictionaries. And I had a copy of the OED, the Oxford English Dictionary, that I had bought in Hong Kong secondhand. So I was up in the little house that I talked about at the beginning, reading this book. I was completely captivated by it, so captivated that the following morning, I was continuing to read it in my bath. I used to bath in the morning. And I came to a footnote which said, readers of this book, a rather specialist book, will of course, know the story of W.C. Minor, the deranged American lunatic murderer who was such a prolific contributor to the Oxford English Dictionary. I'd never heard of this man. I sat up in the bath like Archimedes, if you like, and said, this is a wonderful story. It needs to be told. So by great good fortune, I had the telephone by the bath. And I remembered the telephone number in England of the only lexicographer, dictionary maker that I knew, a woman called Elizabeth Knowles. So with a dripping hand, I found the phone and tapped out the numbers, which is engraved on my brain today. Elizabeth eventually answered. And I said, Elizabeth, this is Simon. I don't mean to frighten you, but I'm calling from my bath in America. Do you know anything about this man, W.C. Minor? And she said, well, you're very lucky. I probably know more about Minor than anyone in the world because I wrote an academic paper about him. And if you do me the honor of getting out of your bath, toweling yourself dry and standing by the fax machine, which in those days we had, I will send you the paper I wrote. And she did. I wrote a proposal which I sent to my London publishers, and they said, terrific, do it. And my American publisher said, no, this is a magazine story. This is not a book. Get on with writing your book about ships. And I was about to do that, to discard the idea, when another publisher saw the proposal and said, this is a terrific story. So I threw away the ship idea, the ship contract, gave them all the money back, and started to work on this book about dictionaries. Who would have thought that a book about 19th century dictionary making would do any business at all? The publisher printed 10,000 copies. And for some extraordinary reason, it took off to the point where this rather odd film has been made about it. But I'm not so worried about the film. The fact of the matter is that the book sold very well and continues to sell to this day.
And it was a phenomenal book, I must admit.